Next is half-life period. I hope everything is clear till this point. If any doubts, please put it in the chat box. Half-life period. The half-life period, which is denoted by T suffix half of a radioactive nuclide, is defined as the time required for 1/2 the number of radioactive atoms in a sample to undergo decay. That means if the radioactive sample contains 100 atoms, the time when it reduces to 50, that means by decaying, that will be half-life period, and it can range from few seconds to several years. The half-life is thus the time required for capital N to decrease to N0 by 2, where N0 is original quantity of the radioactive material. These are few formulas associated with half-life number or half-life period. You need to keep this in mind because sometimes 5 marks questions can be asked on this based on this as numericals. Here we can understand this graphically very well. If you observe in the graph, suppose this is where your atoms are having 100%. Okay, the parent atom is 100%. Now, in this one half-life period, it is reducing to 50. Here you can see the graph as well as you can see the pictorial representation, that if all were red, now what has happened? The red have reduced to 50%. Now what happens is, in the next half-life period, that is in this period, in the same duration, what happens is this will reduce, 50 will reduce to 25, exactly half the number. Then 25 will reduce to say 12.5, and 12.5 further to 6.25. So this is what would actually occur when we are saying that the atom is continuously forming or forming daughter isotopes by giving away or by decaying, and at a point it will come and it will stabilize. At that point it will not generate any radioactivity, and this decay will occur in the form of either alpha, beta or gamma radiations. The units for measuring radioactivity, the very famous Curie. It's named after the scientists who have actually investigated and found out radioactivity in various chemicals. This was originally defined to represent the disintegration rate of 1 gram of radium, but it is now used as the standard unit of measurement for the activity of substance regardless of whether the emission is alpha, beta or gamma or X-rays. When used in this way, the Curie is defined as the activity of 3.7 into 10 raised to 10 disintegrations. The Curie represents a very high activity, and therefore it can be in smaller units such as millicurie or microcurie. This also is asked sometimes as a 5 marks question. Interaction of radiation with matter. Now we have already seen what happens when any electromagnetic radiation actually interacts with matter. If you recollect, whenever any electromagnetic radiation interacts with matter, it will either absorb, transmit, reflect, refract, diffract, scatter, etc. So all these things will happen whenever your electromagnetic radiations are interacting with matter. When these radiochemical radiations or emissions are interacting with matter, they produce 3 distinct effects: photoelectric effect, Compton effect and pair production. Now let us see these in short. So the first one, photoelectric effect. We are all aware of this effect. That means what happens is whatever radiations are going to be impinged on that particular matter, it will absorb the energy and it will eject an electron. So the photoelectric effect is a phenomena in which electrons are emitted from matter after the absorption of energy from electromagnetic radiation such as X-rays or visible light. So this is mostly occurring for gamma rays. Then we have the Compton scattering. Okay. So what is Compton scattering? Here you can observe that there is one incident photon which is incident on a target rest electron. When it impinges on this electron, there will be a recoil electron and there will be a scattered photon. And these will be at an angle phi and theta. And these are very peculiar depending upon the particular sample. That means for sample A, this angle theta and angle phi, as well as this particular scattered photon frequency will remain same. So it is a characteristic of the material itself. We can just go through whatever is written. In Compton scattering, the incoming gamma ray photon is deflected through an angle theta with respect to its original direction. The photon transfers a portion of its energy to the electron, which is assumed at rest, which is known as the recoil electron or also the Compton electron. The next is pair production. Now this occurs at very high energies. If the gamma ray energy exceeds twice the rest mass of an electron, that is, it exceeds 1.02 mega electron volts, twice of it, the process of pair production is energetically possible. In the interaction, the gamma radiation that is striking the nucleus, it will disappear and it will produce a positron and an electron. All the excess energy carried by the photon above 1.02 mega electron volts required to create the pair goes into kinetic energy shared by the positron as well as the electron. So there will be some amount of energy required for making or converting it into positron and electron, and then there will be kinetic energy or the extra energy will be transferred into either kinetic energy of positron as well as the electron. This is pair production process. Now, once we know what is radioactivity, we come to radiation detectors. There are 4 radiation detectors which we will be studying: ionization chamber, proportional counter, GM counter, and scintillation counter. Let us see these detectors one by one. Now, all these radiation detectors are falling under the category of ionization chambers only. That means we have a gas which is present. There is an anode, there is a cathode, and current flows through it. The gas inside will get ionized because of the radiations that are entering, and these will eventually create electrons, which we will measure as current. They will differ only in the operating voltage. If you see here, this diagram shows us the ranges in which these operate. For example, if you observe the range of the ionization chamber, if the applied voltage is increasing in this direction, then your ionization chamber works at a very less voltage comparatively. Then you have the proportional region, and after that we have the GM region. According to these regions, the counters are classified. That means the first one is ionization chamber detector, The second one is a proportional counter, and the third one is the GM counter. So according to their operating voltages, you will observe that there are different operating regions for any ionization type of detectors. So the first one, ionization chamber. In this, you have a circular anode and you have a cathode which is placed inside. This, what you can see placed inside, is the cathode. What happens is, you apply a very high voltage to this and there is gas present inside. Now whenever radiations will strike, they'll ionize, there will be a flow of current. This current will be used by the amplifier. It will amplify it and show it on the readout. The working is very simple. So the ionization chamber is the simplest of all gas-filled detectors and is widely used for the detection and measurement of ionizing radiations such as X-rays, gamma and beta particles. You have to be very sure and you should know this properly, that which type of detector is used for which radiations. Conventionally, the term ionization chamber is used exclusively for those detectors which collect all the charges created by direct ionization within the gas through the application of an electric field. Okay, so the second last point, ion chambers have a good uniform response to radiation over wide range of energies and are preferred means of measuring high levels of gamma radiations. They are widely used in the nuclear power industry, research lab, radiography, radiobiology, and environmental monitoring. This is a detailed explanation of the ionization chamber, which you can go through later on. These are the various applications in detail where ionization chambers are used. They are used in the nuclear industry, they are used in smoke detectors, they are used in medical radiation measurement from the application point of view. The next one is proportional counter. The proportional counter will also work on the same basis, but there is a slight difference in the operation. Exactly what do we measure? Now, in the case of ionization chambers, we are measuring activity, radioactivity for every ionizing radiation that is entering inside. We are measuring the activity of every radiation that is entering inside the particular ionization chamber. Now, what happens is, there is a current flowing for every radioactivity, but it cannot discriminate between a gamma particle and a beta particle. That discrimination is not possible for an ionization chamber. It will, on an average, tell you what is the total radioactivity, but that does not occur with the proportional counter. In the proportional counter, pulses will be generated in proportion to the energy of the radiations that are entering. We will see that in detail, but we will take a break now and we'll continue after 10 minutes.